Ciao e bentornati. Welcome back to Pillole D'Italiano. You can consider this episode number 72, as a sort of a SOS, coming to the rescue episode, because I want to help you and anyone else who's been making these common mistakes by showing you how to use three very common Italian verbs: viaggiare, guidare, and volare. I'll show you how to do it the Italian way, the proper way. In a previous episode, I already touched on this verb viaggiare and showed you how to use it properly. I'm just going to quickly recap on this one and then dive into the other two, guidare and volare, and I will show you how they all behave more or less in the same way. Before we jump in, just a quick reminder, you will find in the description of this episode below a link that you can use to sign up to my newsletter. This way you will become part of the family and you will be notified every time there is an initiative. You can participate in my free initiatives, you can get access to discounts, etc., etc. So just a quick reminder, look in the description of the episode below once you're done watching this episode and sign up. All right, when it comes to these three verbs, viaggiare, guidare, and volare, well, if you speak Italian well enough to be able to use the past tense, in forming the past tense, you might have noticed how some verbs take avere as an auxiliary, as a little helper, and some other verbs take essere. So what I like to say is that coming and going verbs usually require that essere. So that with the verb andare, to go, you would say sono andato or sono andata in my case. With the verb venire, to come, sono venuto or sono venuta for a woman. With the verb stare, to stay, same thing, sono stato or sono stata, I stayed or I've been. Now, with these three verbs that we are analyzing today, viaggiare, guidare, and volare, you might think of them as coming and going verbs. You're kind of moving, aren't you? In Italian, though, we don't use them to express movement towards a place, so you're better off considering them as activities. Verbs such as mangiare, leggere, nuotare, right? So to eat, to read, to swim, you're talking about activities. Though they might imply you moving from place, point A to point B, we are considering them just as the activities that are involved and not as verbs of movement, if that makes sense. That means that with viaggiare, for example, you would not use essere in forming it, in forming the past. You would not say sono viaggiato. You would say ho viaggiato, in the same way that you would say ho mangiato. So these three verbs, as I said, try to equate them to activities like mangiare or like nuotare, to swim, where you would say ho nuotato and non sono nuotato. If you want me to get into more details about the formation of the past tense, is that something that you're not familiar with, leave a comment in the section below and let me know. Right now I'm kind of assuming that you know what to do when I say conjugate this verb in the past. So I'm just giving you like a quick example. But if you need a more thorough video on this topic, let me know. Okay, let's move to the meaning. When you're using a verb such as viaggiare, we've seen this briefly in a previous episode. I'm going to link it up here if you want to catch up on it. Well, viaggiare is to travel. We don't use it to mean that we travel to a destination. We just use it as an independent activity, so to speak. I like to travel. That's how we use it, right? Mi piace viaggiare. So we will never use it with a destination. We will never say I traveled to a place, to a country, to a city. We don't use it in that way. We just use it, as I said, as an independent activity, such as I like to travel. Or if I want to tell you that I didn't travel much last year because of COVID, I would say l'anno scorso non ho viaggiato molto a causa del Covid. L'anno scorso, last year, non ho viaggiato molto. I haven't traveled much a causa del Covid, because of COVID. So you see how I'm saying I have not traveled much. I'm not saying I have not traveled to Greece or to Spain. No, simply I've not traveled much, using the verb to travel just as an independent marker for an activity. Same thing will happen with the verb guidare. Guidare is to drive, like in driving a car. English speakers have the tendency of using this verb with a place, with a destination. They would say, oh, I drive to my office every morning. We don't use it that way in Italian. So guidare, once more, stands for the activity of driving. You could say mi piace guidare, I like driving. Or you could say guido ogni giorno, I drive every day. So once more, you can see how guidare, like viaggiare, simply represents the action of driving, not really the motion from point A to point B. And the same thing applies to our third verb of the day, volare. Volare is to fly, but not to fly to a place. So the verb volare for us, human beings, since we don't have wings, of course does not mean that we can fly of our own accord, but it implies us taking a plane. I could ask you, when was the last time you took a plane by using that verb volare? So I would say, quando è stata l'ultima volta che hai volato? Quando è stata l'ultima volta che hai volato? But I would never use this verb volare to mean to fly to a country or to a specific city. That's not how Italians would use it. Of course, we have a way of expressing that concept, but we use the verb andare. So with all of these three verbs, actually, we can replace all of them with the verb andare in slightly different ways, and I'll show you how. If you want to say that you travel to Italy every year, then you can just use the verb andare and say I go to Italy every year. Vado in Italia ogni anno. If you want to say that you drive to the office every morning, then you will replace to drive, in this case, with the expression andare in macchina, so to go by car. Andare in macchina. If you're unsure about these prepositions with form of transportation, I made a video last week about those, and I'm going to link it up here so that you can check it out. So instead of guidare, instead of to drive, we use the expression to go by car. If you're going to a place, right? So I drive to my office every morning, once more will be literally I go by car to the office every morning. Vado in ufficio in macchina ogni giorno. Vado in ufficio, I go to the office, in macchina, by car, ogni giorno. And instead of volare, if you want to say that you're flying somewhere, well, how are you going? What's your form of transportation? It's the plane, so you're going by plane. Instead of andare in macchina that we just used before, we would use andare in aereo. Therefore, if I wanted to say that I flew to Mexico, in Italian, I would not use the verb volare because I'm not a bird, but I would say that I went by plane. So once more, I'm using the expression to go by and then the form of transportation. I went by plane. Sono andata in Messico in aereo. Sono andata in Messico in aereo. I went to Mexico by plane. That's how we're going to phrase it in a proper way in Italian. There you have it. So if you want to recap what we did today, we saw these three verbs, viaggiare, guidare, and volare, and how in Italian they're not used with a place that you're going towards. They're only used to express the action, the activity by itself in a pure form. If you want to add a destination, then you have to swap these verbs with andare or the proper expression andare by form of transportation. So andare will only replace viaggiare by itself. But if you want to replace guidare, then you would use andare in macchina. And if you want to replace volare, then you would use andare in aereo. I hope this helps. If you had an aha moment, feel free to share it with the community using the comment section below. And if you are still confused or even more confused, let me know, because maybe I need to give you another couple of examples that hopefully will clarify things. Also, let me know if you enjoyed today's episode by liking it. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe before you leave. and I will see you in a week. Ciao, a presto!